Terraria 1.4.5.7 just came out, so let's take a look at all the new changes to the gem staves, gem robes, as well as the 5 new weapons and 2 new accessories that are added in this latest update. One of the biggest changes is the rework of the gem staves and gem robes, which have all gotten a unique effect with the projectiles, which can also pair in really interesting ways between the staffs and between the robes. As well as that, they also got a reduced metal cost for the gem staffs by about 30%, as we can see here, meaning that they'll be a lot cheaper to craft, and so they'll be more accessible earlier in the game. Each gem staff now behaves in a unique way, and the projectiles follow that logic as well. For the amethyst staff, the projectiles now home in on the target, which is really cool actually, because it means that it's going to be a lot easier to hit some of those harder to hit targets, like enemies that are really fast, and especially for early bosses, if you have bad aim, this is going to make it a lot easier. The topaz staff is, I think, one of the best changes, which the new projectile explodes upon impact. It is a little bit slower, but once it hits an enemy, it explodes and can deal up to around 150 damage, depending on how many targets you can actually hit. This is going to be really great for those early invasions, like the goblin invasion, especially before you get other dedicated magic weapons. The sapphire staff also has a couple of new changes, where the projectiles now swirl around in a pattern, and there's actually 2 of them. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that when it says base damage of 21 damage, and keep in mind this is with the hallowed armor on, so the real base damage is closer to 18. That means that it's going to be a total amount of damage between the 2 projectiles, so each projectile is going to be doing around 8 to 12 damage, I've found. So just keep that in mind. Both projectiles are not doing 18 damage each, it is 18 damage combined. The emerald staff has also gotten a really good change. The projectile is just very fast. It's a very fast projectile that pierces up to 2 enemies, so it'll pierce the first enemy and detonate or break on the second enemy. And this is also going to be pretty good for crowd control or just those bosses that are kind of tricky to hit, because you don't have to worry about missing with projectile just because it is so fast. The ruby staff, in my opinion, got done dirty in this update. It just fires 2 projectiles instead of 1, and again, that damage is split between the 2 projectiles. So it's kind of cool because you can rapid fire it, but it's honestly just pretty weak. So I think that this is actually one of not the best changes that we've gotten. The amber staff, I think, is one of the most interesting ones though. The projectile now bounces, so it'll bounce 1, 2, actually let's see if I can do it, 1, 2, it'll bounce twice and then it'll break on the 3rd bounce, as well as also pierce targets, so it'll pierce up to 3 enemies, or I guess 2 enemies, and then hit a 3rd. This is, I think, is going to be really, really useful if you're in the underground desert or the underground jungle, because it means that you can fight in those really tight spaces without worrying about your projectiles breaking on the blocks. The diamond staff, honestly, I'm not entirely sure what changed. I think it just does a lot of damage, and maybe it's just very bright. It doesn't seem like it's that much faster. It doesn't home in on its target, and it doesn't do splash damage. So I think this one just overall got a buff, so it does quite a lot of damage, and I guess maybe it has a slightly faster attack speed. I'm not entirely sure, but this one does seem to be stronger. The gem robes also got a really, really cool change. These now, the amethyst robe pairs with the amethyst staff. Each of these robes has the same effect as the staff. So for example, if you wear the amethyst robe, whatever staff you use will have that same effect, which means now if I'm wearing this one, which if you remember, this one makes it so that the projectiles home in, I can use the emerald staff and it'll home in on their targets, which can be really good, especially with this one because it's such a fast projectile and it also pierces. So now you have a homing, piercing, high speed projectile. So if you mix and match these robes between each other, I think they could be really, really good, especially for how easy they are to make. We also got 2 new accessories, at least I'm pretty sure it was only 2 accessories. I could be wrong on that. I have not been able to see the full list of new accessories, just because the wiki still hasn't updated yet, because the update just came out. But we also got the restoration shield, which is a combination of the cobalt shield and the mana regeneration band. This will be really good for mages because it not only gives you immunity knockback as well as the added defense of the shield, but also the benefits of the mana regeneration band. And the same goes for the Mystic Art Sash, which is just a combination between the band and the black belt. So this gives you the ability to dodge as well, which is pretty nice. Now onto the best part, the new weapons. And I'll have the recipes on screen. Some of them are crafted, some of them are found naturally along the world. Daybloom Staff is going to be a very basic early game magic weapon, kind of equivalent to something like a wooden bow, I would guess, just because you can craft it almost immediately upon entering the world. You don't have to defeat any bosses, or you don't even really have to do much exploring for it. But it seems to fire 4 little petal projectiles, which each do between, I'd guess, around 7 to 12 damage each, depending on how much you crit. But this, I think, is going to be really useful for dealing with not only single target damage, because you have 4 instances of knockback, but also for some of those early bosses like maybe King Slime and maybe Eye of Cthulhu, especially if you don't have any other alternatives. A slight upgrade from that, though, is going to be the Glacier Fang. This weapon is going to be found naturally throughout the world in the same places you would find the Snowball Launcher or the Snowball Cannon, as well as the Ice Blade or the Frozen Boomerang. The second weapon is going to be the Glacier Fang. This is going to be found in the same places where you would find the Ice Blade or the Frozen Boomerang, so frozen chests or frozen crates. And this one's pretty interesting because it has a unique feature where you can charge up the attack up to 3 stages to deal more damage and to shoot the projectile further. So if I charge it just 1 stage, it's going to shoot a projectile that very quickly falls to the ground and doesn't do all that much damage. 2 stages will shoot it a little bit further. It'll still drop down, but it will do significantly more damage. And finally, on 3 stages, it'll automatically release, pierce up to 3 targets, and deal the maximum damage available. This one I think is going to be pretty cool, especially for early game, just because you can find it pretty much immediately. All you just have to do is do some exploring, and it's going to be really helpful for some of the early invasions, just because it does deal pretty decently with crowds. The other early game item is going to be the Mystic Bloom, and this one is going to be crafted finding materials that you would easily find in the jungle, so Nature's Gift as well as some other materials. And this one is going to summon a couple, I think between 3, I think 3, I think it's always 3. It'll fire 3 petals, which will then home in on nearby enemies. And so this is also going to be pretty decent for single target because you can hit it quite a few times, but also pretty decent for crowd control because it can hit multiple enemies at once. Now onto the hard mode items. The first one is going to be the Lightning Strike, and this is going to be an upgrade from the existing Thunder Zapper, which can be found in the Underground Desert at pretty much any point in the game. But this is just going to summon a huge lightning bolt that'll deal area damage as well as inflict the on fire debuff. And this one I think is ridiculous because you can just shoot it wherever. And it is kind of slow, unfortunately, but it just does a crazy amount of damage and it just obliterates crowds. And I think it's going to be really, really strong against single target as well. A fun fact with this weapon is that it'll act similarly to actual lightning, where if you hit the water, it'll deal damage to enemies in the water. So you have to be careful because if you're in the water while you're using this, you can actually hit yourself. The last weapon is the Arc Surge. Now this is going to be a late game item dropped by Martian saucers from the Martian invasion, and I think it has around a 2% drop chance, so probably a rare drop, which kind of sucks, but it makes sense because this weapon is incredible. It shoots red lightning just where your cursor is. Of course it is blocked by blocks, but it has such a long range, you can shoot it across your screen, and it just does insane damage. It has a base damage of, I believe, 180, but if I put on just a hallowed armor with them for the magic, it goes up to 214, and it pierces pretty much infinitely. I don't think it has a limit for how much it pierces, but I'm hitting almost 6,000 damage per second. That is ridiculous. This is going to be such a good weapon for crowds or invasions, as well as also single target damage, just because of how much damage it does. This is just an insane weapon. 720 crit. This weapon I think a lot of people are going to farm for. It does leave some kind of effect on them. I don't know if that's just cosmetic. It doesn't seem to have any tooltip relating to that, so I'm interested to see what that actually does. I don't think it increases the damage that you deal. I don't think so. I don't know what that does. But either way, it's pretty cool. And while we're on theme for the electric weapons, unfortunately, this weapon does not work underwater. So if you try using it while you're underwater, it's not going to do anything, which is kind of cool. It also doesn't go into the water, so it'll only shoot until the surface. That is going to do it for this episode. If you guys found this informative, please leave a like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments what weapon you're most excited to use in your next playthrough. I definitely want to go ahead and play as Mage now because these just seem like so much fun to use. So let me know in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next one.